There is a secret ingredient to a Navajo recipe, which is having a Navajo make it for you. That's our secret. So, no, I'm just kidding. All right, good day to everybody. Yate, as they say in the Navajo language. But John Wayne says Yate, right? I am here with my beautiful wife, Phefelia Nez. I'm Jonathan Nez, the former president of the Navajo Nation. And we appreciate Chef Sean Sherman for inviting us to be at the Indigenous Food Lab's test kitchen today to make a dish, a plant-based dish, whole foods dish. My wife started, of course. You know us Native peoples, we continue to adapt and make it better. So we are probably on the third version of this minestrone soup. So I also want to appreciate Chef Sherman for the great things that he's doing, not just here in this country, but all over the world, and highlighting indigenous foods, the food sovereignty programs that are happening, and teaching or reminding us of the first foods in this country. We want to start out by prepping. So, as you know, in indigenous communities, we don't have measuring cups, measuring spoons. We just go with the flow. For us on the Navajo Nation in the Southwest, our indigenous foods, primary food group is the Three Sisters, as you may know. Corn, beans, and squash. So we wanted to make a dish that has all the ingredients, but of course, we wanted to also use some pasta. And we want to say thank you too to Chef Walter Whitewater and
Lois Allen Frank,
who highlighted this during our time in office. They call it Navajo Nation First Lady's Minestrone Soup.
Here, put some salt in the...
Okay, we're gonna...
Yeah, let it get boiling.
All right, we're gonna put a little bit of salt, we're gonna boil some water, we're gonna cook some pasta. And we got organic red lentil.
Penne.
Yeah, and we had to change some of the recipe items for this dish at the recommendation of the Food Lab. They want to use post-colonial...
or pre-colonial.
Pre-colonial items. For us in the Southwest, we use whatever is available, right? The Navajo Nation is over 27,000 square miles, the largest land-based reservation in the United States. It has over 415,000 enrolled members. And guess what? It only has 13 supermarkets, and it's the size of the state of West Virginia. Now, I wonder how many supermarkets there are in West Virginia. So the reason why I bring that up is we live right in the midst of a food desert. And that's why I was saying sometimes you have to use what is available, but we do our very best to use our own homegrown ingredients, fruits and vegetables in our dishes.
So this dish is I guess my version of the minestrone soup, and it's pretty simple to make. And that was the reason why I did this. We've been on a whole foods, plant-based eating for some time now at the house. And so we've always been trying to find things to make at home that's simple, that we can use with what we can find locally. And then, of course, when you're on a busy day, or you just want to have something to make that's not time consuming.
Yeah, and we're not like world-renowned chefs like Chef Whitewater or Lois or Chef Sherman. We're just everyday folks, just like many of you, and it's always good to experiment on some of the foods, especially looking back at what our ancestors used to eat, right? And in the Southwest, it's a little different. we don't have bison like you all have, or fish. Most of it is like, wild game too. We also have a lot of sheep. Those Navajos that are watching probably recognize that we love mutton, and that's been a part of our diet. But for us, we chose to be plant-based and try to reincorporate some of our own indigenous foods. We were just in the Ho-Chunk Nation yesterday, and they were sharing a lot of their ideas and also some of their traditional foods with us. Great food sovereignty program. We were also at the Confederated Salish Kootenai tribes, visit their food sovereignty program. There's great things happening all across the country in terms of revitalizing indigenous foods.
But I grew up in a traditional Hogan. My mom and my dad, they built that house from the ground up, the entire thing. We had a dirt floor, no running water, no electricity. And we grew up very traditional lifestyle. I mean, we grew up with the Navajo traditional teachings, and then we grew up with livestock. We always had horses, cattle, sheep, goats. And then, of course, we got commodity from time to time. I remember seeing some of those. So my aunts, my grandmas, they would have those too, and people would share them. And so we had that. But I'm very thankful I grew up way rural, because it was very beneficial for my siblings and I to grow up that way. We were very active. Nobody sat indoors all day, and there was always something to do day in, day out.
I mean, I was pretty active when I was younger. Basketball a lot, all these sports. And once I got an education, got to college, went back, I didn't really take care of myself. And I got up to 300 pounds, believe it or not. And one day, as a tribal leader, I'm over there telling kids, take care of yourself, eat right, exercise. But then they saw me at 300 pounds and they're scratching their head and wondering, he's telling us as a tribal leader to be active and to eat healthy, yet he's 300 pounds. And I guess it didn't resonate to our young people. And I was called out. That's when we started to reevaluate our lives about what we eat. And I started running.
That was the beginning of 2012. So he started running, and it was walking a mile. And then the goals just kind of, the distances certainly increased. It went from there to running 5Ks and then the 10Ks. Then it gradually grew to half marathons and full marathons.
I'm going to put the pasta in.
I don't think don't put the whole thing in there, because we're only making like half of this pot. So we just need to make little bits to just eyeball it.
And those of you that are Native men, you know who the boss is in the kitchen. So this probably sounds a little familiar within the Native American kitchen, right? Because the women will tell the men what to do. And that's what I'm doing. Yes, ma'am. We'll let that boil. We watched some films like Forks Over Knives, What the Health, Game Changers, and especially the ones that show you how some of these foods are developed and made, especially the meats.
Yeah. And so one day he comes walking back into the house, and my older son and I, we were home. And he comes walking in with a 55-gallon
trash bin.
Yeah, it's a trash can, huge. And he comes walking in with that, and he said, okay, this is the day that we're going to go through the kitchen, pantry, everything, and we're going to throw away all the food, all the items that are not good for us. And that's exactly what he did. He opened the refrigerator, the freezer, went through every cabinet.
What I should have done then was to explain to my wife and my children what I was doing, but I just went radical. Go ahead.
We just stood there and we watched him do the whole thing, and we just seen all our sodas, all our potato chips, all our cookies, just everything just going there. And I think when he was done, we were just left with a few pieces, maybe of like some produce and some canned beans, and it was just a few items in our kitchen. That was our introduction to whole foods, plant-based eating, really going back to just simple ingredients, eliminating as much processed foods as possible. You want to do something drastic like that, I think it really does take the whole household. You can't do that just alone and then have the rest of your family eating everything out. And so that's been our journey.
The pasta is about done, as they say, al dente. Maybe in Navajo we'll say kate bigahile. So we'll drain that out after it gets a little bit more soft. Parents, grandparents, elders, you have the ability to take control of your household, right? You don't have to be so drastic as I did, bringing a 55-gallon container, but you have the ability to set the table, and literally by getting the foods they eat and making it more healthy. I, as a tribal leader, as a former president of the Navajo Nation, former First Lady, we spoke about our health and wellness journey. That health and wellness journey followed us into the council delegate position, to the vice president and the president of the Navajo Nation. And so throughout our time in office, you can see how our personal health and wellness journey also influenced policy and law on the Navajo Nation. We were fortunate to be a part of the first ever junk food tax on the Navajo Nation, where we tax junk food, utilizing those dollars to go back into the community for health and wellness projects. We also have a tobacco-free legislation, commercial tobacco ban in public places. So, our passion is in health and wellness, and you can see that being incorporated into our time in office. I remember, Phefelia, when we banned candy at our parades, and that got very controversial. Navajo Nation government was spending tens of thousands of dollars on candy to be handed out at our mini fair parades, right? And Navajo, we love our fairs and our parades. And I remember how controversial that got. But the great thing that happened was people were having that discussion at the dinner table about their own health. And they're all mad at me saying, why are you banning candy? That's a tradition. That's for our kids. And I said, okay, look, we spend tens of thousands of dollars on candy. And yet at the same time, we're going out and advocating for additional resources to fight diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cancers in our communities. And it just doesn't make sense when your own government is encouraging, handing out unhealthy foods. But one thing that people agreed upon is using those tens of thousands of dollars, not on candy, but we turned around and we purchased fresh produce from our local Navajo farmers. We got the produce, and you know what? We were handing those out like candy at the parade, fresh produce. It was very controversial at first, but we do have to do something, especially in Indigenous communities, to fight diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and the cancers that are, high in percentage in our communities.
Okay, so in the pan we put olive oil and the carrots, celery, zucchini, garlic, and onion. And then of course you can put in salt and pepper and then just saute it.
And you can see we used various types of carrots as well. Feel free to experiment yourself. You don't have to follow the same recipe that we're doing. But again, growing season's coming up. Grow some fresh produce. Look at that. That is good medicine. As you know, food is medicine. And that's what we believe as tribal members. I know it's a cooking show. We're supposed to probably be saying a pinch of this and a dab of this, but you know, us natives, we just go with it. We love to talk, and we appreciate the opportunity to be here. We are working on a project where the U.S. dietary guidelines has been debated. It happens every 5 years, and we press very hard this time, this 5 years, to say that why isn't indigenous foods in the primary food group in the dietary guidelines? And you know what? First time ever that there's an advisory committee for the dietary guidelines. First time ever a Native American physician, expert, Valerie Bluebird Jernigan was on that committee, advocating for Indian country and making sure that, you know, we're adding water now, a little bit more sauteing, get a little bit more tender, you know, and so we worked with her. We got resolutions and letters from many of the tribes throughout the country, organizations like NCAI, and just reminding the federal government that we have a special relationship, a government-to-government relationship, tribes with the federal government, and there should be tribal consultation. Believe it or not, there was no tribal consultation on the U.S. dietary guidelines. But you know, us natives, we interjected ourselves into the process. We put beans and lentil within the primary food group. And I say we, all the tribes voicing that there needs to be indigenous foods in the primary. And it's not going to only help tribes, it's going to help all Americans. So that final report was developed and issued now. It was given to the new administration. We are hopeful that Secretary Kennedy will heed to those recommendations. Phefelia just poured some vegetable broth into the stew. And so we're hopeful that some of those or all those recommendations will be carried through, and looking to more healthier foods in our schools, in our senior citizen programs. And of course, those food items set the standards for what is offered in the USDA program, like the food distribution program.
Yeah, so we just put vegetable broth in the pot, and we're gonna let that simmer there. We're gonna add in the beans, the tomato paste, the diced tomatoes, and then the frozen corn. So let that all go in there. And those are at the end.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, just putting some tomato paste in there. So really when I make this at home, it's like I just eyeball everything, which is probably what a lot of you do. But we will share the actual recipe that will be posted. And then the other thing about this recipe, I mean, this is basically pasta, vegetable broth, and whatever other vegetables you want to put in there. So you can come home any day. You have things that are, you can put in basically any other type of vegetable in here, and it will still, it'll still come out good.
There is a secret ingredient to a Navajo recipe, which is having a Navajo make it for you. That's our secret. So, no, I'm just kidding. But this really, I think one of the special ingredients we would encourage is to utilize some of those fresh vegetables that come out of your garden. We challenge you to plant some indigenous seeds. I know some of these seeds have been handed down from generation to generation. Take care of those seeds, protect it, but also share the stories that was handed down to you about those seeds, and so that the younger generation appreciates, you know, what tribal people have gone through to survive to this day. Because we want to be able to have a better tomorrow for our children and our grandchildren. Well, my wife and I met at the university in Flagstaff, Northern Arizona University, over 20 years ago. We got married. We we heeded the challenge of our elders to go get an education and go back to uh, the community and help. And we did that. Um, and over 20 years of marriage and over 20 years of being in public service, we just transitioned out a couple of years ago. As you noticed from her talk, you know who the real president of the Navajo Nation was, right? And that was my wife. I was just the face of it, but we're a great team. You know, we've been able to help out, give back to our people, and now we have a for-profit corporation, Nez Consulting LLC. You know, with all that knowledge that we gained over the years, why keep it to ourselves? And that's why we're here in Minnesota, visiting the Ho-Chunk Nation and the Shakopee, and just doing cultural exchange, you know, and learning from each other, because not every tribe knows it all, right? And that's how this country was before contact, right? We were able to trade with one another, share recipes with one another, share seeds with one another, and you know, as they say, sometimes things happen in a full circle. So there's no ceremony to doing this, you know. You just put as much as you want in there, and man, this minestrone soup is going to would be awesome. And so there's a concept, probably in all tribal communities, most likely, but in Navajo, there's a concept of a term we say "tahuejitego." Tahuejitego can be defined in so many ways, but my personal definition for that is resilience, people or a person that can overcome challenges. We also say in Navajo, hadainosne, meaning to persevere and to get stronger from that. And you know, you can see a change in the tide in this country, where there is more interest in indigenous communities and in food as well, in culinary arts. We've seen a lot more interest in our young people becoming chefs, and also going back to farming too, which is exciting. I think we're living in an exciting time period where there's a renaissance, I call it, in indigenous foods, indigenous health and wellness as well.
This was the chili.
All right.
Oh, we just put a little bit of the New Mexico. What is this?
We brought a little taste of the Southwest, some chili powder. We'll get some of that in there to zest it up a little bit. Okay, so what we're going to do here is plate the food. You know, you could put the pasta in the soup, but we tend to keep it all out of the soup because we're going to pour it right on top of that.
And pasta, you can put as little or as much as you want in there. Some people don't want a lot of pasta.
As a runner, you know, you want to have a lot of carbs. So, and I'll give that to Phefelia. All right, and we'll go ahead and dish it out. Make sure there's some of that stew in there. Look at that, yummy, yummy. And that is labeled the Navajo Nation. I guess now it's the former First Lady Minestrone soup. You know, in Navajo, they say that if you eat chili and it's too hot, that means you're a jealous person. So some of those traditional teaching will be handed down through generation to generation. Well, I thought that was always funny. Yeah, see, we could have put a little bit more chili powder in there. but it's good. It's good. It's got a good taste.
I'm a lover of tomatoes, so anything with tomatoes I will eat. But really making these, the more vegetables you put in there, I mean, you already know like what kind of vegetables you like, right? So when you put them in there, I mean, you're really tasting, that brings out the taste in them.
Beautiful dish. Good, yeah. Good job. Thank you. We appreciate the time being here at the Indigenous Food Lab, the test
The test kitchen. Yes.
kitchen, and as you can see in the background, may see in the background, there's some folks that are working. They're creating some dishes here as well for people that want to taste Indigenous foods. So come and join them at the Midtown Global Market if you're in the Minneapolis area. And let's not forget Chef Sherman's restaurant, right?
Yes, so Omni.
And we'll be there tonight. And if you have any questions for us, we're on the web, Nez Consulting LLC. We're willing to help in any capacity. And a shout out to the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine for giving us an opportunity to go into other tribal communities to share our story and also to learn from other tribes as well. So we're going to be signing off. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, and God bless you, and continue to strive to be healthy.
Yes, and make sure to involve your children. I mean, they can start off with simple things like this, and then they'll evolve into, based on their own taste, and it just starts from there. So thank you so much for watching.
Take care.